Welcome to Lessons for Leaders, a conversation with three CIOs about using AI to humanize work. I'm your host, Dan Turchin, CEO of PeopleRain. Work will change more in the next, call it 3 years, than I believe it has in the last 300, like literally since the first Industrial Revolution in 18th century Great Britain. We're at this fascinating time where we're fundamentally rethinking our relationship with machines. At PeopleRain, we're positively impacting how the next billion employees experience work. PeopleRain is the AI platform that automates employee service. Many of the most respected organizations in the world use PeopleRain to automate IT and HR and give employees back 4 to 6 hours of productive time per week. We automate about 5,000 common work tasks, and the system integrates with more than 100 enterprise applications. Now, on the side, when I'm not CEOing, I host a podcast called AI and the Future of Work. We've published more than 300 episodes over the past 5 seasons with a lot of my heroes, my role models in and around the world of AI. We have a community of more than 1 million listeners. This week's episode's a special one. It's with Josh Dreen, CEO of the Work3 Institute and Future of Work Authority. Josh just published Employment is Dead, a provocative new book about how technology is disrupting work, a topic that we will be discussing quite a bit today. Before introducing you to the exceptional panelists for today, I'll set the stage for today's important conversation. I want you to think about the life cycle of an employee's journey and how everything that involves the collection of some data creates an opportunity for us to learn from that data and deliver a better employee experience. So when you think about everything from who do we hire, what types of employees perform in our culture the best, where are there opportunities for maybe lateral or horizontal, or I should say lateral or vertical advancement, it's all a data problem. We can use that data about our organization to make better hiring and talent management decisions, onboarding, remove friction from the onboarding and offboarding experience for employees. Obviously, it's very easy to use AI to automate the delivery of IT and HR employee service, get employees back to work faster. That's what they want. They want to come to work to do more of the stuff they love. Automate common processes, use data to figure out what processes are good candidates for automation. I frequently say any task that's being performed manually more than once in a day is a good candidate for automation. Training and development, think of hyper-personalized learning journeys. The traditional LMS learning management system is gone. What's ahead is just-in-time learning journeys that adapt themselves based on where the employee is at in their learning journey. Resource planning, who do we need? Where do we need them? What should we pay them? All those decisions are able to be unlocked by mining data that's already sitting within your enterprise. Content reviews, kind of the most common emerging use case for AI. AI as a thought partner. And then, of course, through to offboarding, make sure you recover assets uh, provided to employees and are responsible about managing everyone's data and security as they're onboarding, and then all the way through to offboarding. I mentioned 300 plus episodes of AI in the Future of Work, a few things that amazing guests have taught me over the years that I think are getting more true by the day. Three columns I'll share just as part of kicking off today's discussion. Future of work related to technology, culture, and humanity. In the technology column, something that we as technologists like to talk about, but the topic goes far beyond just the tech. I believe that AI is the new UI, voice is the new app. Just think about how the interfaces, how we engage with machines is changing every day. Not too far from today, here we sit in 2025. What we're going to see is that intelligence is ambient in the enterprise. Smart networks are going to beacon off their health, and the technology will be smart enough to deliver the best kind of service possible, which is no service. We'll have environments that are smart enough to anticipate our needs. In terms of work culture, think of a time when AI is actually going to be used to deliver more empathy, more just-in-time coaching, helping employees feel trusted and valued and respected at work. I know that seems like heresy because there's a lot of apprehension out there about automation and job elimination, but I want you to start thinking differently about the important role that AI will play. Think about a time not too far in the future when every employee gets back 4 to 6 hours a week to be the best versions of humans that they can be. And in that world, think about what you're going to use with that extra almost a day a week. Maybe you can use it to be a better employee, but also maybe you can use it to be a better parent or a spouse or pursue a hobby. That's the world that we're going to be living in, where you can do as much in 4 days as you do now in 5 days. And gosh, I believe that's a celebration of what the best of humans can do. That's what I want us to think about when we're coaching our teams through this important transition. On the right-hand side, humanity. So, how is AI impacting humanity? Think about the future of humans as being a combination of things that are innately uh, uh, human-only tasks, things like empathy and critical thinking, but combined with skills like prediction tasks that are better left to machines. That fusion of the best of what we can do paired with the best of what machines can do is really going to be an unlock that I'm excited about. And I know today's panelists are excited about that unlock as well. I told you the real stars of the show are the three panelists. I just want to tee up the conversation with some thoughts that make me optimistic about the future, but now you're going to hear from the real experts. So Tim Rolfing from Satellite Industries, Helen Norris from Chapman University, Jason McKay from Riggs Distler, all friends, all exceptional CIOs. And I'm going to start off by asking them um, a simple question. And we'll start from the middle and we'll radiate outward. Helen, of course, first share a little bit about your background, how you got into the space, and then talk us through the AI conversations that you're having within the university.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Dan. It's great to be here, and I'm excited for today's conversation. I'm Helen Norris. As Dan mentioned, I work at Chapman University. I've been at Chapman for about 10 years. I've been in higher ed, however, since 1997. Working previously at UC Berkeley. I'm delighted to see one of my former colleagues online, and now at Chapman, which is quite a bit smaller than some of the larger universities I've worked at. We have about 10,000 students, about 2,500 to 3,000 faculty and staff, so a mid-size organization. I think for universities, when AI became a discussion topic a couple of years ago, I think the initial reaction we all saw particularly from our faculty was, can you make it go away? Can you make it so students can't use it in the classroom, please? Which is the same reaction I think we had to the internet 20, 25 years ago. And of course, no, you can't make it go away. So the good news is I think we've evolved from that conversation of people being scared and worried about how wanting to keep things the same. Now our conversations with faculty are, what is the right way to use AI in research? What is the right way to teach your students about AI so that when students come to you from our universities, that they're prepared to work for Tim and for Jason and for everyone on this call, that they'll understand what AI is. It didn't take 5 seconds for the students to start using ChatGPT. So it would be a head in the sand attitude to kind of think of not bringing it into the classroom and adjusting our curriculum to address that. Also, I'm a CIO. So like Tim and Jason, I manage enterprise systems. I manage the network. So looking at how we use AI in the context of, as you describe it, Dan, better working for people. How do I use it, for example, as a time saver? For me, I've seen great advantages on our security side where we can do more prediction and actually both forward and backward looking, I would say, with AI tools in security. I'm probably a little bit, I love talking to Dan because he's so optimistic. I might be a little bit less optimistic than Dan. I do think that AI is here to stay. I do think it's going to make a difference. I don't think our people are going to go to 4 day. I wish we were all going to go to 4 days a week. I think the benefits are probably going to accrue to the organizations more than they accrue to the individuals. I think that's been our track record in the past, and I see that in the future. But I do think that we're going to see a lot of changes to the work. We've already seen it. So let me stop there and give other people some time to talk.
Thank you, Helen. Now let's bring in the non-contrarian on the panel, Jason McKay from Riggs Distler.
Good afternoon. Good morning, everybody. Been with Riggs Distler for almost 10 years. Riggs Distler, we're a utility contractor. So we upgrade the infrastructure for utility companies on the generation side, the transmission and distribution side. So as a contractor, we're basically a construction company. People would ask, why does a construction company need AI? Multiple reasons. One, how we bid things. We put together bids, tens of millions of dollars, but historically we've done it in a very linear way. But the way we do a transmission project in northern New Hampshire with the topology is a lot different than it is in southern New Jersey, which is flat and sandy. And then how do we manage our fleet assets? How do we create, a, a smooth curve on the bell curve for the amount of mileage, operating hours? What type of revenue are we making versus the cost of our fleet vehicles, and understanding all those different data points to be able to create, gainful insights. I also believe that AI is here to stay, like Helen said. Ignoring it, you're just ignoring the future. You're going to have a blockbuster moment. People remember Blockbuster Video. They didn't convert quick enough, and they no longer sell DVDs or VHS tapes. But one of the approaches that People Rain has is about the people. So for us, how do we automate rote processes so that way people can focus on much more value added type of work to make us better as an organization, gain the efficiencies, and increase the trust that our customers have in us.
Well said, Jason. Thanks for joining. Last, Tim from Satellite Industries, who represents a fascinating industry that you don't want to think about a lot, but you care about a lot. Tim, how's that for an intro?
Yeah, that's a great intro. Hi, everybody. My name's Tim Rolfing. I'm the Vice President of Technology and the CIO for Satellite Industries and Satellite Shelters. They're actually two separate companies. Industries is the largest manufacturer of portable restrooms and bunkhouses and suites, and it's an international organization. And Shelters, the sister company, is a modular office space company. In our view of AI, we look at it in a couple of different ways. We look at it from a manufacturing perspective. So we've had all kinds of analysis going on with production scheduling and defect analysis and predictive analytics, which assumes that you have good data. So we realize that we've got some data cleanup to do in order to make the predictive analytics part go through. We've also looked at it from just a basic sales training perspective. We've looked into tools where we can do role play with sales tools for our sales group. So it's broad, it's diverse. We've also looked at it from a perspective of security, as Helen said, as we build our security posture, strengthening it with cybersecurity tools that has AI built into it. And then the last thing I guess I'd mention is one of the things I think is really important is that we embrace it. It's here to stay. And so what I've done in our organization is created an AI task force. I've asked my business peers to give me the most forward-thinking and creative thinking individuals to join me in a monthly task force. And what that does is it allows the staff that's really interested in AI to bring their ideas, whatever they've heard, whatever they've researched, whatever they've seen, bring those ideas forward, and then we kind of examine them as a way to engage everybody in the organization. And that's worked well. We've actually had ideas that have been brought into our organization through that mechanism. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Dan.
So you're all called chief information officers, and yet I'd argue that these days you're equal parts chief philosophy officers and chief ethics officers and chief automation officers. I'd like this group to understand how AI is impacting the role of the CIO, and what do your peers in the C-suite expect from you that maybe has changed in the last few years?
Go ahead, Ellen.
Sure, I'll go ahead and jump in. Um, you know, I think there's been so much hype. I think AI is here to stay, but I think there has been a lot of hype about it. So I think there is an unrealistic expectation in the C-suite that AI is going to fix all of our problems. So I think that's the first thing we have to do as CIOs is work with our colleagues across, in my case, across campus, work with the leadership to understand what's an appropriate use of AI for us. So I think there's a hefty education piece. One of the things I work with my colleagues all the time on is I think the AI tools are only as good as the data that's being used to drive them. So where in the past, perhaps we haven't been able to get as much engagement around data pieces, I tried to take advantage of the opportunity to speak about AI to bring that conversation forward so that we can really address some of the data issues that we've had in our organization for a long time. I think my colleagues, both in the C-suite and on the faculty side, also are looking for guidance around privacy issues, security issues, ethics issues, and they're looking to the IT organization, I think, for that. We also have an AI task force that I co-chair with our provost, and our initial efforts were really focused on AI policy. They're also, I think that includes how we work with partners, how we manage our data, and educating what we provide in terms of education for our campus users who are taking advantage of AI tools.
Well said. Jason?
I had a mentor tell me 25 years ago, seize on the momentum of chaos. So this is an opportunity. Like Helen alluded to, the whole data governance perspective. We're as a construction company, we rely heavily on Excel. A lot of that data could be somewhere else where it's easy to call and easy to get. So that's driving data governance with us. With the C-suite itself, it's really providing some information about what AI is, what it's not. As a construction company, our business strategy is not AI. We have a business strategy, and then we need to look at where AI might be able to enable the business strategy or to facilitate it or to help us grow, be more efficient, and to gain those insights that we didn't have before. So it's actually giving examples to people in the C-suite and their employees too, that this is what AI can do. And also, what should you not do? Don't dump all your HR data into some, LLM somewhere where someone else can make, a request, and then all of a sudden it has all the salary, social security numbers, and things like that. So it is a little bit of the wild, wild west, I think, at this point. But I do think it's having some coalescence about use cases. Almost like the whole discussion about blockchain a couple years ago. It was like a solution in search of a problem. But I think people, once they play with AI, they actually understand what it cannot do, and then really starting to focus on the use cases of it. So that's what we're really focused on right now.
Tim?
Yeah, from my perspective, Dan, I think my peers expect me to stay on top of it, stay on top of the trends with AI in the technology space. And that doesn't mean that, our company needs to be on the bleeding edge, but certainly we don't want to fall behind because it's easy to get behind as fast as the pace is going forward. I do think, right, that there's also a part of them that is a little bit skeptical. So, they have to realize that a significant amount of some of these AI tools may not succeed. So we always expect that we're going to do some kind of proof of concept or something to prove it out, and that there's some kind of return on value. And when I say that, I mean we're going to either reduce expenses or we're going to find a way to increase revenue out of anything that we try. Now, we may or may not budget for something, but if we can prove that there's some value and it becomes self-funding, my business peers will actually, be a proponent of that, and we'll go forward with it.
So, Tim, building on that, we're all enamored with the technology, and yet we also have a responsibility to ground the business and, wherever the demand is coming from within the business, to ground them with just the pragmatic implications of how we measure the success of AI-based or any technology projects. How do you have that conversation with the business when it comes to kind of separating maybe the euphoria, the apprehension, about the topic called AI from kind of the things that ultimately we're all expected, to deliver on, like the topics you mentioned?
I think it's really important, just like you do any other kind of project within your governance perspective, right? That you have some kind of measurement set out in the beginning that you're trying to achieve. And the popular ones are some kind of ROI or net present value or payback period, or it could be as simple as reassigning people to another task. I think Jason mentioned automation as part of it. So in the end, if you prove out the value, then there's an expectation that you're going to get the value back, and you're asking the business, hey, I signed up for this, and I'm saying I can reassign people to other work because AI can do this work for them. Then we want to make sure that they reassign them to whatever other work that they're going to do. And I think that accountability sometimes gets lost. So it's important when you're done with the initiative to go back and check on that.
Jason, you've educated me about the world of a manual laborer, maybe going through an onboarding process, or thick gloves, 20-degree weather, in a Pennsylvania winter, and actually reimagining that experience through the lens of intelligence and automation. Talk us through how you've gone to the business and said, this is a technology problem that's hiding. Really, we can use some of these emergent technologies to solve business problems that everyone's aware we have.
Yeah, so it's interesting. We rely on union craft labor, and a lot of times we don't know who's showing up. We'll ask for 20 linemen, and then they will show up at the transmission right away that morning. And we have a paper process right now. The paper process, they usually get FedEx back to our headquarters in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And by Thursday, Friday, our payroll team is desperately trying to input employees into our ERP system so that way we can pay them. So like one of the things we want to do is to be able to, be pushing this for a couple of years, but with AI, there's a different component with automation, to be able to digitize the app itself, to be able to get that into our systems quicker, to remove the friction of rework and people have to key things in, which causes errors, to reduce, so that way people can get to work quicker. It reduces the amount of friction of people having to do more manual things. And it adds value to the whole organization, and like Tim said, what's the business case? What's the return on investment? What's the risk cost benefit analysis? It takes X amount of time to do it this way. It's going to take Y amount of time to do it this way. There's a cost component per an hour of that. What are we going to save? And what's the bigger case over a year? Because we'll onboard, offboard 2 to 3,000 people a year based on the projects we have. So how can we do that quicker? And and if we have an event where you have a really bad snowstorm in New Jersey, and if you have an inch of snow in New Jersey, that's a crisis. But if you have a really bad snowstorm in New Jersey and the payroll team can't input people on that Thursday, Friday, people may not get paid next week. So how do we remove those types of barriers as well?
Helen, you've educated me about the business of a university and how you map a different set of key performance indicators to technology solutions. Maybe talk through what matters to the business of a university and how you think through think through those through the lens of technology.
Sure. If I think about, there's many different perspectives, but if I think about when we provide tools or services to students, because we're a university, we're a not-for-profit organization, we're a little bit less focused on ROI than Jason or Tim's organizations might be. We care about cost. We don't want to throw money away, but we're not in the profit world. So it's a little bit different for us. So for us, it's a lot of our key performance indicators or how we measure the value of the success of a project is on the value it offers to a student. Sometimes that's as simple as how often is every student using this? Because if every student is using it, just like ChatGPT, clearly there's value to the student for that. So as we roll things out, we think about how it's going to impact the students. Is it going to help them learn in a better way? One of our indicators in higher ed is, do our students graduate on time? So can we use AI to help our students make better decisions about which courses they need to take to graduate in a timely fashion? If students want to graduate on time. We're a high price point university, so our parents don't want to pay for an extra year, right? So if we can provide students with tools that help them map their path through the university in a better way, which is something we've done kind of manually in the past, there's real value for us there. So there's some of the ways we're all about getting the student better educated and in a timely fashion.
So we're focused on solving business problems, and I think that's the best way that we communicate the language of value, and that we're the best partners for the business as technologists. But there's also this responsibility that we have. Everyone's looking to us to evaluate the different solutions, and I'd argue that evaluating AI first solutions is fundamentally different. When you think about Windows versus Macs or Zoom versus Teams, like look, there's like a deterministic set of features. Every time you do this in Teams, it's going to do, clicking A is going to result in B. And now all of a sudden, with AI first solutions, they're non-deterministic. We're talking about code that writes code, and that creates, whole new dimensions of potential productivity gains, but also it's really hard to educate the business or even educate ourselves about what it is that might be kind of the unintended consequences, for better or for worse, of these technologies. Um, Tim, maybe if I could go to you first, and in the business
Sure.
of satellite industries, how do you think about what's different about evaluating AI technology?
Yeah, for me, this has been a learning perspective. So, in the traditional sense, you think about how we get a use case and then we go search for a solution to solve a particular use case. I don't look at it with AI that way anymore. I look at it as the AI technology gets introduced to me. Then I ask, well, what use cases can it solve? Because the technology is so broad, what I'm seeing coming through, it will solve multiple use cases. So, for example, we were approached about a sales tool, and we decided to pursue the sales tool, but at the same time, we recognized, hey, this will help us with customer service. This could help us with HR. This could help us with sales and marketing. It could solve a bunch of use cases. So, from that perspective, the AI first question has changed how I look at it going forward.
Jason, what about you?
So it's interesting because, with construction project managers and even our field people, they're not the most technically savvy in the world. But showing them capabilities like what ChatGPT can do, where instead of becoming the author, you become the editor. And, you can make a prompt and it'll get you 75 to 80% there. And then it's stylistic after that, and introducing your voice to what the output was. But it's showing people that and them starting to do it. And then they come back to you like, holy smokes, Jason, I had to do this SOP for this construction site. I did the prompt and it literally got me almost there. So, I mean, we're just seeing savings of time on that. But when when we look forward to what it could do, you know, we as a company have so many different data points that are very disparate, and it's being able to pull all of that information together, to be able to gain those insights that add value, that really tell us, if you're doing a project in Maine during September to March, you really need to put together a bid that gives you like 10 lost days, right? Where you're not going to be able to work. But if you're doing that same project, between April and August, you're going to have two. So how do we, and it's getting things like that. So that way we tweak our bids so they're more precise. We're looking at our revenue targets and margins. And then how does AI help us make all those things better at what we do? And it's even like AP automation when we did that a couple of years ago, that kind of freaked people out a little bit. But now it's just like it's secondhand. And now they're like, well, how can we make it go faster? And I'm like, well, we could do certain things, but and it's showing people the capability of the tools, and just letting them play with it a little bit themselves, but giving them some guardrails and some expectations of what to do and what not to do, and tell them, hey, go prompt this, go prompt that, and see what you get. So it's a journey, and then it's kind of fun.
It is. Well said. Helen, you mentioned that it took students about 5 seconds to discover ChatGPT. I'm going to take the under on that. I think it's probably more like 3 seconds. Uh, I'd say I think this is non-controversial that over the next decade, there's going to be, cataclysmic shift in how we deliver the product called higher ed.
Mhm.
When you're thinking about, everything from the ethics of when and how to use LLMs to teaching tools, and you've got the business, you're learning with the business in real time. um, how do you think about, as a technology leader, how do you provide that leadership when the sands are still shifting and there's a lot that goes beyond the role of a technology leader?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think one of the advantages we have working in higher ed um, is that we have experts in our community, right? So here at Chapman, I've got experts in uh, big data, data analytics, and in AI. So we can one of the things that I'm able to do is engage with our faculty who are leaders in this area to help educate me as we go forward. Now, let me give you a specific example. We have a leader, a faculty member in our College of Business. Her name is Helene Blanchette, and I want to give her credit for what I'm going to say. She spoke at Davos last week, and she talked about AI. And one of the things she's doing in the classroom is encourage instead of thinking of AI, instead of training her students to think of AI as a tool, she's educating them to think of AI as a different species. So in that situation, her students will be prepared to go out and manage teams, excuse me, in the future that include humans and include AI. And so one of the advantages of being in higher ed is that you get exposed to that kind of forward thinking on a daily basis. So while I think our leadership of the university looks to me to be the leader in that area, I get to leverage our internal experts as we think about it. Our faculty do well learning from each other, so we're inclined to bring our faculty together and share ideas, just as I just described, so that we have a better set of tools for our students to use. I think my role is to make sure what I really bring is to make sure that we do it in the context of you protecting university data, protecting the university from a policy perspective, managing our relationships with our providers. That's, I think, where one of the things that our faculty really expect from me.
Yeah, brilliant. Those are good insights. Particularly, I think your colleague, you said it, Helene, is that her name?
Helene Blanchette.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. I've
yeah,
heard the name. Thanks for sharing that. So, as techno optimists, I think I'll put all of us in that category, including everyone listening. We believe in the power of technology. We believe that technology is a force for good, and we're very good at thinking about what could go right. Well, now we're also being looked at to answer the equally important question, what could go wrong? Jason, you alluded to that. The power of data in both directions, and maybe some of the unintended consequences. So when you look at some of the very present, very real um, concerns about AI, whether it's IP leakage or data privacy or personal security or uh, models doing talking about topics that are off limits, and you have these conversations in the hallways, in your place of business. Maybe starting with Jason, how do you think about what concerns you and where you feel like you have an obligation to both be a techno optimist but also a techno realist?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest concerns I have is bias. One, there could be inadvertent bias. Two, it could be overt bias, and we've seen examples of that. And then three, there's malicious bias. There was an instance a couple months ago where a company had someone inject, data into an LLM model, and I think the parent company was ByteDance, and they estimated that it might have cost them millions of dollars. So the concern I have is really around bias, and the more papers you read about LLMs, the
Mhm.
more you're finding out about just how much bias can be injected into a model. Um, and it's funny because I think Elon Musk had a quote that, we want the models to tell us what the truth of the facts are, whether it makes people upset or not is irrelevant because, the fact will never be construed with someone that has an opinion. So I get concerned about bias, and when you look at the whole synthetic data discussion and how that can create model collapse and drift and hallucinations, that concerns me as well. Because we, as a construction company, our margins are pretty tight, and we need to be very efficient. And we can't have a bit go sideways because someone injected bias or pushed the parameters. So going forward, it from an ethical perspective, it'll be really interesting to see how the world itself responds to what the definition of bias is, and then how do we keep that at bay as much as possible. So that way you do get realistic outcomes, almost as opposed to an opinion, because some of the overt bias that you've seen in some of the papers, you could say it's construing an opinion.
AI is perfectly designed to replicate human bias. I think
Yes, it is.
it's an
Oh,
important attribute of AI for all of us to know about. Tim, when you think about what concerns you most, what's top of the list?
I'd say two or three things. One is data leakage, right? So data getting outside of your company into some public repository, and all of a sudden data that could be confidential to your company is out into somebody else's repository to build content generation from. That that is the one that I hear all the time and the one that comes up internally in our company quite a bit. Second one is just security, right? With the ability now to automate, attacks and learn about your own environment. I get concerned sometimes that the hackers are using AI to try to
Mhm.
attack your own systems, right? And you need to stay ahead of that, even though we've got AI built into our cyber tools. I think they're using it on the other side the same way. And the third thing I think about sometimes is just how many of these AI tools that I see coming at us every day, and just making sure that, everybody's careful. You do your POCs and you make sure that you get your value that you're anticipating before you decide to move forward with something. But it would be certainly easy because it makes us drool sometimes as we see some of this stuff demonstrated, but we want to make sure that it works behind the scenes.
Helen, what's your
do
perspective on
not
that?
look at the man behind the green curtain.
Well, Dan, I would say, first of all, I want to say I agree with everything that Jason and Tim said, and I'm not going to repeat because they were so eloquent in what they said. But let me just add a couple of other things. In a university environment and in other environments, I'm also concerned about intellectual property and the opportunity or the risk, I guess, around intellectual property violations. I'm not a lawyer. I don't, I struggle with understanding who owns what in a university context in any case. But making sure that we don't do something to violate intellectual property rules, I think it's really critical for us in the university. We're not a huge organization, as I mentioned, and I'm also the other barrier or concern I have is about cost of AI-based tools. And so people are very excited about it, but right now AI-based tools are expensive. I won't be the first to mention DeepSeek because I see it mentioned in the chat. When we see things like DeepSeek, as we saw yesterday, maybe finding a way to address that cost, because I don't understand. I haven't wrapped my head around how they've done this, but it is less costly what they're able to do. However, are we going to put other things at risk to bring in some lower cost AI down the road? And I think that's the risk with something like DeepSeek. So I think we have to be more innovative, right, in how we can generate tools that are a little bit less costly than what we're seeing. And I agree with the comment in the chat that obviously there's a censorship opportunity within DeepSeek. So, are we going to see cheaper tools come out of environments where we're going to have to sacrifice something else?
We got a few minutes, and I'm going to get everyone out of here on time. But I'm not letting you off the hot seat without answering one last important question. And first off, I apologize. There's a steady stream of great questions coming in, and I'm going to apologize. I'm going to pull some of the themes together from some of the questions I've been asked, and we'll wrap up with one important topic. So we did, in fact, make it through almost all of this discussion without mentioning DeepSeek. Helen, thank you for breaking the streak. And I'm going to ask the question in this way. So in an environment where, let's say, the cost of inference, the cost of AI, drops to almost nothing. We've seen that happen in storage. We've seen that happen with compute. We've seen that happen certainly in other domains of tech. It's going to happen in the domain of AI inference. Bring out your magic wand and tell me from the perspective of your role and your industry, what's something that we're talking about in a few years when innovation is unconstrained by the cost of AI? Maybe, Jason, if we could start with you and your magic wand.
Oh boy, magic wand. It would be really, really, really cool when we're doing bids and you look at a 10-mile transmission line where I could combine LiDAR, AI, topography maps, schedules, the type of vehicle equipments we use, and have a 3D reference of that transmission right away, where you can almost like Tony Stark it, where you reach in and you grab something and you pop it out. If we could do that when we're creating projects and bidding projects, and you actually, you know, way past AR, VR, but like real time interact with the project you're doing. I just think that would be so cool. And then anybody else, if you haven't listened to AI in the Future of Work, great podcast. Listen to it all the time. And the whole human side of it is what makes it appealing.
Thank you. That was unsolicited. I appreciate it.
It's a great podcast.
That QR code goes to all this. There are hundreds of conversations we've recorded like this one with brilliant visionaries. Tim, magic wand, get it out. Tell us what you think.
Somewhat close to what or related to what Jason has said. I've seen this in utilities industry, close to what he said, but basically you're taking all of this non-related, unstructured data, you're making sense out of it, and you can come up with a decision. In my world, it's manufacturing, it can be supply chain, demand forecasting, production operations, defect management. But when you bring all of that data together and you can magically take your wand in there and get your instant answer, I think that's where the future is going. And those companies that can do that quickly will have a competitive advantage. In a prior life, I saw a company that was doing demand forecasting based on power outages for utility. And so they were taking lidar data, camera data, tree height, pole height, soil type, trying to see tree density, tree canopy, predicting where the power outages were at the biggest risk, then using that data to figure out where to send their tree trimmers in the next 6 months. And after that, figuring out how much money to invest as an organization to minimize the amount of power outages. To me, those kinds of use cases are what the future are going to be.
Helen, you get the last word. So you are the Professor McGonagall of AI. So get out your magic wand. Tell us what's ahead.
I hope it's okay for me to do two different answers. First of all, as a university educating students, I really hope that we have an opportunity to leverage data about our students to help them make better decisions about what classes to take in order to create faster paths for them to get to their careers. So, how are they doing in the class? What do we need to do to intervene to if they look like there's perhaps heading for a grade that doesn't help them in the future? So that's one area. But the other thing I'd just like to touch on, we're a research university. I really think that in a very optimistic way, AI can really help us solve big world problems much faster than we have. So I'm not an expert in this area, but in the medical field, as we look at how drugs interact, the amount of data that is now processed is huge, and I really see that as a fit for AI in the future, so that hopefully, maybe at some point, it will help us cure cancer, for example. So that to me is would be a perfect world.
Yeah, Helen,
Brilliant
how
way
do
to
you
close.
blockchain all of your medical information into one source? Then you aggregate that and tokenize it to be able to gain those insights. That's a really cool point, Helen.
Absolutely. Yeah, Helen mentioned curing cancer, uh, ending famine, uh,
Yeah.
climate crisis. I mean, these are the kinds of problems
Mhm.
that big thinkers, this altitude, this magnitude of thinking is what we should all be considering. That's really why I say it's a better time than ever to be
Mhm.
human, to be a techno optimist. And I hope that some of us listening on today's podcast are out thinking about, how you can go and change the world and do it responsibly. Think about, what could go wrong, but don't let that constrain your vision. Um, and with that said, thank you to the amazing panelists. This went by so quickly, but I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you.
Good. Thanks for doing what you do.